I'm going to say good evenings, ladies and gentlemen, because it's evening when we're recording this, although you could be watching this at any time of day because it's a video. So, like, I don't know when this is going up, but good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Betwixt the Books. Today we will be doing another reading roundtable, but this one is special because we forced our guests to read within not a genre, but a style of book, which was spooky/spoopy. So, the idea here that you're picking something that's fall / Halloweeny / those vibes, you get it. You know, that was our thing. Like, hey, we're gonna do a spooky themed one. If you have something spooky that you want to read, and then come talk to it, that was the point. So we're gonna try this out, see how we feel about something where rather than everybody bringing whatever it is that they've been reading, they try to read or start reading something that fits our theme. So we'll see how this goes. If you like the way this video goes, tell us in the comments and also give us ideas for future themes. We have one other themed episode coming up later this year. But outside of that, we're definitely open to things like that because we feel like this leads to some interesting discussions. So we'll see how this goes. Otherwise, we can just go back to our plain old normal, whatever it is that everybody's been reading sort of thing. I don't know. We're trying new things. Enjoy.
Here at Betwixt the Books, we're either trying all of the things all at once or you don't hear from us for several months. Consistency is not our friend. So unless you're me and you have to read 20 romance novels in a row. Anyway, so we're going to do introductions, starting with me because I'm the least important. My face is on this channel a lot. Normally I'm talking about sex books or history books. We're doing neither of these things today because I made a poor choice for this video. But my name is Gretchen. I am one half of the Betwixt the Books channel. And I read a true crime book for today, and I don't read a lot of true crime, but I'm not really sure that it was true crime, so we're going to talk about it.
I'm Emily. I am primarily, I would say, a fantasy science fiction reader, but I do have a soft spot for really pretentious literary fiction. In particular, I love to read it and then gripe about it the whole way through. It's my favorite thing. There's always so much content to gripe about. I did not read literary fiction for this month. I read a book. I read a book that thought it was, well, that tried to pretend it wasn't a ghost story while also insisting it was a ghost story until it decided to commit to one of them, and we'll talk about that later.
Hi, I'm Megan, and I am usually reading a little bit of everything. I tend to ask Gretchen for a lot of recommendations for romance to help me sleep at night, and then I tend to read a little bit of everything the rest of the time. For this month, I read the first book in the Lockwood & Co. series that is now a Netflix series, and I'm very excited to talk about the kind of the overlaps between the movie and the book, and then also some just very general like social commentary about the book that kind of hit me in the face whenever I was reading it.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm also like a resident person of this channel, even though I've been mildly inactive. My life has been mildly hell in general for the last couple of months. Don't worry about it. We're just going to ignore that. If you've been watching these roundtables, you know that most of the time what I've been reading lately has been fan fiction. But when I read books, one of my top genres is horror. I'm also a fantasy sci-fi person. Anything gay in any genre, I will read. Like, that's what you get. And for this time, I'm actually going to talk about a real book because I've been listening to an audiobook. I haven't finished it, so I can't like tell you like my overall thoughts on it. But I can at least talk a bit about it because I've been very much enjoying it. So I'm going to be actually talking about a real book and not fan fiction for once. So if you're like, okay, let's stop talking about the fan fiction, here you go. I'm not going to do it today. You don't have to worry about it.
I mean, I'm torn between like I'm proud of you, but also like fan fiction is legit. So like, it's that weird like I don't want
It's
to
just very
invalidate your life.
niche. Like, I get that not everybody is going to want to read this. Like, I totally understand it. But also that's all that my brain wants. So that's what I have been reading for the most part. But that's what it is. But I've been listening to an audiobook. My commute recently changed from like 20-ish minutes to an hour. So most of the time I want to turn my brain off and I just play music, but I have been listening to this audiobook while I drive. So yeah, that's what's been happening.
All right, we have a wide range of things here, and it's not intentional necessarily, but what normally happens when we film these is that since I'm already making individual videos about the romance books that I'm reading, you almost always get a nonfiction pick from me. Today is no different. I have brought more nonfiction, except for the nonfiction is not like politics or history. It is a nonfiction book that I read specifically for the theme of this. And so when Michaela and I originally decided we wanted to do like a spooky episode, I was like spooky or spoopy, kind of imagining that I would read maybe a nice Halloween romance or a witchy book or something. And then I just decided, no, let's read the true crime book about child murder. So I don't know why I made that choice, but I am here to talk to you today about, and this book has a long title, so I have to pull it up. So it's called When the Moon Turns to Blood, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and a Story of Murder, Wild Faith, and End Times. And this is technically a true crime book about Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell are very extremist LDS Mormon faith followers, and they decided that dark spirits were beginning to enter the bodies of certain people close to them. She is most notorious because they murdered her teenage daughter and her 12-year-old son because they were taken over by dark spirits. But she also instigated the murder of one of her 3 or 4 ex-husbands. And she got her brother to do all of this murdering for her, and then he mysteriously died. So there's a lot of murder. And it's very
Complicated.
Yeah, it's very sad. So I actually already was familiar with this case because there is a documentary on Netflix called Sins of the Mother. And if you were looking at whether you wanted to watch the documentary or read the book, watch the documentary.
Okay.
This book is so weird. I was texting Michaela while I was reading it, and it opens with the scene of when they find the children's bodies. So like it's a very powerful like opening. There are, the teenage daughter in particular, her body and her death was particularly violent. And I'm not going to get into details in case this is going to really freak anybody out, but it's a really powerful
Gruesome.
opening. Yeah, it's gruesome. It's a thing. But then there's like a whole third of the book that is interrupted to give you the entire history of the Latter-day Saint Mormon religion.
No thanks.
From like Joseph, like the founder, the guy who found the texts, like all the way up until present. Yeah, found the text.
They're like,
up until present day.
Insert some Mormon propaganda into the middle of this true crime book.
Well, okay, but here's the thing though, the writer is clearly not a fan.
Okay.
So I would say that it's also like because she believes that the tenets of the Mormon faith, like this like prepper, the world will end and you have to be prepared for like the end times thing to be what causes this. Obviously Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow are not representative of all Mormons. But the author's also not a fan, so I feel like she's not outright dismissive, but the ways that certain phrases are written, it's just like it's pretty fairly critical. But yeah, it's just like if you're reading this book to understand how two people, in particular, like this mother could end the lives of two of her own children, having become so convinced by her religion and her believed gift of prophecy that they had been like dark spirits had taken over their bodies and made them into zombies, and therefore they had to be eliminated. The blame is pretty squarely put on like the history of time in memoriam of the Mormon religion.
Isn't there like a known mental illness where people think that all of the people in their lives have gotten replaced with like doppelgangers? I'm sure that didn't help. Like the religion thing gave it like substance. That's not the word.
Substantiation.
Thank you. But isn't there like legitimately like a mental illness where people think that everyone has been replaced by doppelgangers?
I think there is, but I don't remember what it's called.
I don't know what it's called either off the top of my head, but I like that could also be in play here too. Specifically, this thing of like they've been taken over by demons is like very.
Yeah,
it's like
I think they make
something.
a good. I think the author ends up coming out on the side of that, like Lori Vallow was like brainwashed essentially by Chad Daybell, who just like really loved to control people, and in particular women. And there's like a whole group, like a whole like mini cult that kind of happens. So yeah, I don't know. It definitely, I mean, not that like I wanted to be saturated in like all of these murders, right? But at the same time, it was just like a very uneven book that almost felt like, and also because like this case isn't over, right? Like Lori Vallow is still institutionalized, I think, right now, like regaining mental competence so that she can stand trial. So I feel like there was just like, we have to add all of this background information to make this a book length thing, rather than we need to add all this information so that you understand, because I think we could have gotten that history in like less in a less interruptive way as well. It was really, really weird.
I'm kind of wondering if that history added some context, not necessarily just for her belief about what was happening, but like situating in the community and understanding like that aspect of it. I'm trying to think of like any reason why that would be there, because otherwise it seems like it's really taking away from the life of these children that were lost.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, you know, I think making the case that, you know, if she hadn't not been a Mormon, but belonged to this very extremist sect, and like, I think the book was trying to say, like, this is regular Mormonism, and then like this is how they would interpret this, and then here's this offshoot that is what they were following and believe, and it's not even really sanctioned by the Mormon Church, because it's like so far out there, to a certain extent. So I think like that was kind of part of the point as well. But yeah, it really did. Like I was listening to it and I was like watching and like doing dishes and stuff, and I would like walk away to like put dishes away while the audiobook is playing and come back and just be like, yeah, I didn't miss anything. Like I didn't. And I mean, as Meghan knows, you know, we do a lot of reading about religion, not necessarily Mormonism, but I was just like, I just don't like, yeah. So consider this like a very truncated, also like books to documentary review, which are very popular on this channel, and I have a number of those as well. Again, watch if this sounds like something you would enjoy. Watch Sins of the Mother on Netflix. Although I am really fascinated by how little the religion plays into the documentary when it's really heavy in the book. So really interesting, like medium change there. But yeah, I decided to go hard for this episode, and maybe I just should have read a witch romance, guys. I should have just stuck to my brand.
Did you read that vampire one that I sent you a picture of that everyone's looking for right now? Whatever that one was.
I know.
It's fine.
Anyway. Emily, do you want to talk about nicer things?
Sure, although I don't know how much nicer it really is. I read The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. It is a dual timeline narrative that it alternates between a modern day 20-ish year old girl named Carly and her maybe late aunt in 1982. The premise basically is that the aunt, Viv, sort of fled home in 1982, and she was gonna go to New York City, and then she like hitched a ride with someone, like literally hitchhiking. And then he like got creepy basically, and so she kind of just got out of his car like it was like a here's fine, just I'll get out here, it's cool, this is cool, we're fine here, and of course like tried to do whatever. And so then she ended up in this town called Fell, New York, where weird shit happens basically. And she gets a job at the Sundown Motel, which is this really rundown, like not great looking motel on the edge of town. And over time, she discovers that, I mean, the place is really weird and it is absolutely haunted. It has 3 ghosts in there actually, that haunt the place quite regularly. And so her task, mission, whatever, I don't know, she decides that she wants to figure out what's going on with the ghosts in the Sundown, etc. And so she ends up sort of doing some amateur detective work. And the other timeline takes place in, what year is Carly supposed to be in? Hang on. That's Viv. 2017. Carly's in 2017. And so she is in college and her mom has just died of cancer, and so she is feeling very unmoored, and she has this lifelong mystery in her life, of her aunt who just suddenly disappeared one day and was never heard from again. So she decides to take spring break and drive her happy little ass to Fell, New York, to do some of her own little amateur investigations and figure out what happened because nobody else bothered to try, etc. And so the rest of the book is basically Carly trying to retrace her aunt's footsteps and just like figure out all of the details, these things that were happening around it. There is a string of murders involved, of course, and so like the gist is that Viv has determined that it is one killer across all of them, and there's not enough tangible evidence to prove that, basically. And she takes it to a police officer and like all of the research that she's done and the things that she's figured out. But again, it's one of those situations where like when it comes down to brass tacks, none of it is a leg to stand on for the police. Like it's everything is so circumstantial at best that like you're making inferences to connect these things without any hard data to prove that connection, basically. So the police are just like, literally no one is going to stake their job on what you have. I'm sorry. And so she has to deal with whatever, you know, on her own terms if she wants to. And I don't know if I want to spoil the whole thing or not, because like I'm not gonna lie, the last 25 to 30% of this book really, really, really annoyed me.
Oh.
I struggled my way through a lot of it. I found the whole thing to be mildly frustrating the whole time.
Yeah.
And like, to be fair, I don't really read a lot of horror novels. I don't read mysteries in general. I find them on the whole admittedly a little tedious. And I don't know where entirely that feeling comes from for me. And so like I don't know if it's just that like this book straight up just was not for me, or if it was. But the thing is, the prose itself has a really, really strange pacing that is kind of, I don't want to go say off-putting necessarily, but it is sort of disruptive to like the reading flow, basically. And I'm not gonna lie, the very last page is garbage. The very last page is absolute hot garbage, top to bottom. It's so bad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hope she doesn't watch this video, because I'm so sorry. It's just, it was, I finished, I closed the book and I put it down beside me, and I sighed so loudly that my wife heard me in the other room wearing headphones.
Oh no. Oh no.
So like, you know, it has some interesting things that it's doing. It introduces a handful of we'll go with compelling characters. I feel like any of them could really have been better explored. I feel like the true crime elements that were effectively like the circumstances that created the ghost story, I feel like actually the way that it was constructed really detracted from like the weight of the ghost story, basically. It could have, I feel like it could have been a lot more powerful than it ended up being ultimately. And the way that it wrapped up at the very end also was just, the best word I've got is trite.
I feel like it's so funny that even though we were clearly reading very different books, we have like a very similar feeling about them. Like that could have just been so much more meh.
I feel like it could make a really neat movie if they decide to make like a film out of it. I feel like it would actually definitely be worth watching if they do the effects correctly. There are some elements of the ending that I did enjoy, for what it's worth. Like I know I just complained dramatically about the whole thing, but there were like some things in the resolution that I did actually appreciate. But it just felt very buried in all of the stuff that made me feel very weary.
John, this came up. It was so funny. John and I were talking about a romance novel that I was reading that I have a very rant-filled review. And I was like, well, I liked the bulk of the book, but the ending just didn't do it for me. And John goes, well, if the bulk of the book was good, then the ending just is what it is. And I looked at him with the scariest eyes and I just went, if it doesn't stick the landing, it's stuck.
Yeah. The last impression that you get is like a lot. It means it can really like affect the way that you view the entire thing. Yeah.
If a gymnast doesn't stick their landing, they lose a lot of points.
Yeah.
You
Book
don't
crime,
win
John. That's a book
if you
crime.
don't stick the landing.
I really appreciate the validation of this circle because he just seemed really confused by my feelings. So 50% of this roundtable so far have made the wrong choice.
Yep.
Megan, did you make the right choice?
I am pleased to report that I made a great choice.
It is a good one. I have read that one. It is a good one.
You have? Okay,
I have,
perfect.
yes.
So I'll be really interested to hear your take, Michaela, since you've already read it. So I actually started watching the show over the summer. It just popped up in my recommended things to watch on Netflix, and I thought, oh, I'd give this a shot. And before the end of the first episode, I was like already on my Kindle app, like, where can I find this? Do I have to buy it? Is it the library? And so I bought it that night on my Kindle and started reading it. I was really surprised that it was a children's book, because the show definitely made it seem like it's for an older audience, maybe more YA-ish. But I don't think that it being a children's book in any way, shape, or form took away from the story. It's still a really cool story. So for those of you who haven't read this book or seen the show, who must be wondering what the heck Michaela and I are talking about, the gist of the plot is that we are in London, and this horrible problem, it is called the problem, capital P, has taken over, and all of these ghosts and specters of different varieties and temperaments have started to infiltrate the streets of London. And there are only a select few children with psychic abilities who can perceive the ghosts or the specters, and then they're trained and given tools to vanquish them, get rid of them, send them away, help them cross over. So the show actually covers the first two books, I believe. I only read the first one, which is called The Screaming Staircase. And in this book, we meet Lucy Carlisle. She is an exceptional young ghost hunter. And throughout the story, we learn a little bit more about her background and how she comes to Lockwood & Co., where we have Anthony Lockwood, another young person who is gifted to perceive ghosts, and he has his very own psychic detection agency, PDA. And he immediately hires Lucy to be on his team with another ghost hunter named George, and together they investigate hauntings and try to figure out like who these ghosts are, why they might still be hanging around, where they might be sourced, like where they were murdered, or where there might be a significant artifact or something. And then they take care of it. They just get rid of it. Lucy makes a really bad decision at one of the places and decides to take a little something from one of the houses that they are investigating. And it opens up this whole new problem for them, because now she's starting to communicate directly with one of the spirits, which is a very rare sort of gift. And so that's, I don't want to give away the ending, because it's only an 8-episode series on Netflix. And so it's very, very, very bingeable. And so I don't want to give away the endings about what all happens. But some of the things that struck me as being so interesting about this book is we don't really know where the problem came from, at least not in the first book. So there's this overarching mystery of what is the problem? Why have ghosts started to walk the streets of London? And more specifically, why are children the only ones with the ability to perceive them? And so this made my doctoral student brain turn, as it does. And I wanted to ask this question to everybody here tonight about what might it mean that children are the only ones who can perceive this problem and are being tasked by adults to take care of it. And one of the things we talk about in my classes at school is how social issues find their way into books. And the whole time I'm reading this, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm thinking kids are the only ones who can perceive it. They're the only ones who know about it. oh my gosh, we're talking about climate change. We're putting all this responsibility on kids to fix the problem that the grown-ups created, but nobody really knows where the problem came from in the first place. And so I thought it's really an interesting comment on where we place the onus of responsibility for things that occur. So I think it's well worth the time for grown-ups to read. It's a pretty quick read because it is a children's book and highly consumable. I finished the first book in maybe 3 days of just kind of casual reading before bed. And it will be something that I go back to whenever I need something to restore my faith in humanity. So yeah. Lockwood and Co., The Screaming Staircase, Jonathan Stroud. You should read it. It's great.
Yes.
I read Jonathan Stroud's Bartimaeus trilogy
Yes,
when
I
I
read
was
those
younger.
too.
I finished the third book of that series and everything that happens in the end of that book in English class. And then I had to sit there and have a breakdown myself privately in class. I literally, like, I put the book down on my desk and then I just sat there and stared blankly, like, into the, just like straight forward in the classroom. And I just sat there and I stared for a hot second. Eventually my teachers are like, "Are you okay?" "No, thanks though."
Yeah,
I'm
the
just gonna sit here and
Bartimaeus,
think about my book for a minute.
yeah, the Bartimaeus trilogy really just does not come to play. I've not read the Lockwood and Co. books. I know you have. Michaela's review of The Screaming Staircase is her second most popular video on the entire channel.
Clearly, I did not do my homework before I started reading. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I love hearing other people's opinions on stuff because I believe, if I remember correctly, I read that out loud to Emily's wife Taylor, and then did a review of it. But yes, no, I very much enjoyed it. It's one of those books that it definitely has horror elements to it. It does not pull its punches, even like some of that, like you were talking about how they force these kids to deal with these ghosts, but you never talked about, like, the reason the kids have to deal with these ghosts is that if a ghost touches an adult, they like start to, like, their body like rapidly like deteriorates and they turn into like a skeleton, like it's like harmful to their health, but they cannot see the ghosts. So yeah.
Well,
like,
and if you
God, it really is
stare at the
climate change.
ghost, yeah, I mean, like, even like you stare at the ghost, you get ghost locked,
Yeah.
which is basically like just you either die or it puts you in a trance.
Yeah.
I think
You either get a corporate job or you work retail. And both of them kill you, so
yeah.
we are drones. No, but something I did like about it is that there are so many different mysteries that the threads start to be pulled in the first book, and it's enough to make me want to go back and read the second book. And it's enough to make me very, very angry that Netflix canceled the series.
No.
Yeah, so if you're out there and you've watched Lockwood and Co. or you've read the books, please sign our petition to bring it back.
Yeah, I kept meaning to watch it because the second I saw it come up on Netflix, I was like, Michaela. Like, I've never read this, but like I remember that you really liked it. But who knows? Maybe if Percy Jackson does really well for Disney Plus, they'll pick up some more of these. Like, solidly good, like, kids shows that are also not just for kids.
Yeah, good for grown-ups.
I think another thing that we're seeing with like adaptations of children's media, especially like older children's media, the stuff that came out and was popular when we were children, it's being directed for an older audience at this point. It is, a lot of them I'm seeing are taking a much different age group focus. And like you see that sometimes with like they're trying to like retain some of the audience that the books had, basically, where it's like they're trying to pull in nostalgia and make it appropriate for that age group while not completely alienating the age group that it was originally for. So like they just scooted up a few years, basically, so that it's more like this is a teen show because the teens are more likely to be watching the show, right?
I feel like there is, and I haven't like done a whole lot of research on this because I haven't had cable in like a decade, but I feel like there is a huge gap right now in media for the like tween market. I feel like there's a lot of stuff for like little kids and then a lot of stuff for like teens and up, and like this like in between, like they don't have like a Drake and Josh or like these shows that we had that were aimed not at teens but at like prepubescent kids. And I think part of it is that they're like aiming higher to like hit more of the adult spectrum, and also because tweens have moved to the internet, so maybe they're not getting as many eyes on screens as they used to, because like that age bracket now has a phone and a tablet and is playing
I was gonna
video
say
games.
their screens are just this big.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and
But for,
that's
like, yeah.
I mean, it's part of the conversation that we're gonna have when we do our second themed reading roundtable. We don't have one planned for November, but the one that we're doing in December is YA authors that are now writing adult books.
Yep.
And so that's one that we've been really excited to do for a while. I've read a couple of them over the course of this year because a lot of them are releasing romances, like they've gone from teen romance to adult romance.
It's spicier.
It's spicier and less creepy. Less creepy, but it's really interesting what they retain from
the YA.
that. But
The
yeah,
habits.
just like, yeah, it's like this, like, but the same thing, like this market that like moving these really big names who are still big names in YA going and potentially taking readers with them. It's just interesting. But
yeah.
From some of the explanation that you gave of Lockwood and Co. Meghan, if you haven't read Shannon Maguire, I don't know which vowel she prefers. I never remember. But anyway, she wrote, I think it's Middle Game, I think is the right title. And the gist is that basically these children have been kind of created in a lab to be super geniuses, and there is one boy who is really, really good with words and a girl who is really, really good with numbers, and they basically end up able to communicate telepathically. And like there's a whole, it's really interesting. I have not accomplished finishing it yet, but it's really, really good. And I think there are a lot of similar notes being hit across both titles that you would enjoy it.
Oh, thank you for that. I will definitely check that out.
If you like that, I don't know how much of Middle Game you've read, Emily, but the children's book that she pulls like excerpts of at the beginning of certain sections that didn't exist, she has also written, called Over the Woodward Wall, I believe, and has now published that under a pseudonym of A. Deborah Baker. So like
she's creating her own expanded universe
series, a la like Wizard of Oz, like portal fantasy, now also exists too.
Is that one a sequel to Every Heart a Doorway?
No. Okay. No, it's completely separate.
Okay. Just similar titling.
Yes, yeah. Because she definitely really likes portal fantasy, but this one is very much more like if she were to write her own like Narnia or Wizard of Oz, like this is what it is. I would recommend that one too. I think that one's got
Every Heart a Doorway
3.
also has like there's 6 books in that series now or something.
Oh, there's more than that, I think.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
They're short enough that I'm sure she's just having a great time knocking them out.
Yeah. The newest one that's going to come out this winter has dinosaurs.
Ooh. I really liked the first one. I think I read the second one, but I don't remember now. And I thought they were really, really interesting and fun.
Yes.
We did Every Heart a Doorway for a bibliomancy episode, right? So that's us and Taylor, I think.
Taylor had to read it for grad school.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Every Heart a Doorway was classroom reading. I think it was. I guess I could be wrong now, but I thought it was something that Taylor read for class.
No, I think it was Michaela's pick for a book club. But
It
anyway,
definitely was. It definitely was.
That makes sense. I don't know. Listen, Taylor's first graduate program was in children's literature, and she was reading so many books just back to back that, like, plus on top of book club, like, I can't keep track of all of them. There were some of them that I was like, I was sure that was a classroom book, but apparently not.
that's
It's
okay.
fine.
We can't either. I look at my
No.
Goodreads sometimes and I go, when did I read that?
What
I
was
know
that
it was for class. I had one class that had a 50 book reading list.
Ugh.
So Michaela,
My turn.
yeah, you want to tell us about this book with the incredible cover?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually put the cover up because I feel like it would like not be fun if I don't do this. So this is, guys, I read or am currently reading because I didn't finish it. There we go. The Dead Take the A Train by Cassandra Khan and Richard Cadre, I think, or Kudre, something like that. This is cosmic horror. So think like H.P. Lovecraft, like unknowable entities of alternate dimensions that are doing things in our world. I would also classify it as urban fantasy because it is our world with magic. It's set in New York City. There's sort of two protagonists. Hold on, let me get their names right because I'm listening to the audiobook, and for whatever reason, when I listen to an audiobook, my brain never like fully holds on to the character names. I could not tell you why. Okay, so Julie is the first one. And Julie is some sort of mage. I don't think it's described like what type of mage, but clearly has magic powers. The book opens with her trying to take a demon out of this bride at her bridal party. She got like possessed, and as she's doing that, she like pauses. She like accidentally cuts this woman's like arm open while she's like trying to wrestle with the demon. And like inside of her arm are just like a million of this woman's like eyeballs, like a bunch of little eyeballs inside of her. And she's like, what the actual fuck is going on with this woman? And the mom, like the mother, comes out and goes, what did she do to my daughter's arm? She's like, accidents happen. Sorry, I was trying to get the demon out. Like, what's going on? And the mom's like, oh no, leave those in there. She's the new womb. Like just like she's like playing this role in this cult of like birthing something. We don't know what. But all of those eyeballs are apparently eggs that need to be inseminated by a demon, but this is the wrong demon. She doesn't want this demon in her child. She needs this demon taken out. A different demon needs to get in there. This is this opening scene. It's just this happening. So she gets the demon out. It's like described as like a liver or something, like an organ that like pops out and like tries to crawl away, and she crushes it. And then the mom tries to stiff her fee. Like her fee was like $1,000, and she gives her $600 instead because of maiming her daughter because she like cut her. So then she like releases some sort of creature from her bag to attack the mom, and we do not know whether the mom survived this. She gave like a mildly creepy monologue to the mom about like, are you sure you're not going to give me the rest of my pay? Okay, cool. Let me tell you this weird story. And then at the end of it, aha, monster. And then she leaves. So there's that chapter. She goes home. She talks about how she doesn't have enough money for rent, but it's okay because the woman who owns the building likes her and knows that she'll give it to her eventually. She talks about how she has a bunch of drugs that she's taking to sort of get by. And she takes one that basically gives you temporary synesthesia to like to just try and feel something. And then it switches to her ex, who is a lawyer working for a firm. And he's going to a meeting. And they have to wear like earmuffs and goggles and booties because there's some sort of weird fluid on the ground that you don't want to get on you, but they also never clean up. One of the guys at the meeting is like, oh no, my like earmuff is broken. And they're like, well, too bad, bud. You better hold it over your ear. You don't have time to go get another one. And then an eldritch like god creature shows up. The guy with the broken earmuff is in pain from like the noise that summoning this god creates, and he turns away. And then basically because he insulted the god and like by turning away as the god appeared, that character kind of gets taken away and I guess tortured, not killed, tortured until the god feels like there's been penance, which could be forever because they're a god and they don't know how time works. Like that guy could die being tortured. They don't, the timeline of a human to a god is nothing. But they're at this meeting. The god is doling out jobs. Basically, it's like the person in charge of the law firm. And the guy gets given this job where it's like, hey, there's this creature that's eating the dreams of our clients. And as we know, dreams are our intellectual property, and this creature is eating our intellectual property, so you need to kill it. And he's like, okay, cool, I can definitely do that. And he's like, why do I know this creature's name? Like there's this, it keeps like pinging like something, like I'm aware of this, like something's going on. And then he's like, oh, you can't kill that creature without also dying. Like it has to be like reciprocal. And he's like, I'm gonna outsource this to my friend with money issues, ex-girlfriend. And that's the start of this book, is the two of him trying to get out of having to kill a creature that he can't kill without dying, because obviously he doesn't want to die, and her trying to get out of her money issues and like get somewhere. It definitely has a lot of gore, so if you're not a fan of gore, maybe don't read this one. It has a lot of humor and a lot of foul language, so if you're not a fan of like swear words constantly, maybe don't read this one, but it's very funny. And it's very action packed, like one thing after the other, like snappy. So if you want something that I feel like it's like John dies at the end, like very like every chapter is something and it's funny and it's a little bit like at the same time, like that's what this book is, which is something that I really enjoy in horror. Like it's like fun to have like a humor horror book, and I feel like this very much is that. Again, I haven't finished it, so I can't tell you like if it maintains that or if that gets tiring, because it can, like when you have humor horror all at once, like sometimes like over the course of a book that can kind of become like not funny anymore or not shocking anymore. But from what I have read of it, I've really enjoyed it. Isaac listened to the first part with me while we were driving back to Western Massachusetts earlier this week, and he really enjoyed it. And he's not really a horror person, but is a fantasy person. So if you're a fantasy reader, you might enjoy it, because again, it is like set in like urban fantasy with like horror elements sprinkled in. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, I would recommend it. And the cover's great.
The cover is so
great.
You sent me that and I was just like, that is amazing. That is art.
Yeah.
One of the benefits I get through work is we have a book benefit, which means that I get to expense an unlimited number of professional development books, or magazines and podcasts. It's really, really cool. But the other part of it is that we get to expense one fiction title per month as well. And I think I found this month's.
Good. Yeah, I do recommend it. I highly recommend it. People might know one of the authors, her book last year, Nothing But Blackened Teeth, also has a really striking horror cover. That one's like a novella, which I think a lot of people read and enjoyed last year. Earlier this year, I have an arc of it, but I haven't read it yet. She also put out The Salt Grows Heavy, which is like Frankenstein's monster, vampires, mermaids little novella thing. So she's doing some, I think it's actually they're doing some cool stuff. Because I think they're non-binary. So sorry if I was using the wrong pronouns there, but I think actually I read that earlier today that they prefer they. So yes. Yeah. I like me some stuff.
It's not intentional, but like because we just decided that we would bookend this for like our guests, whoever was coming. And I just feel like every single time you're like, yeah, I just read this little old thing, and then you're like, she sliced open her arms and there were eyeballs.
It's cosmic horror. It's meant to make you go insane.
But it's just like every time, and then you bring up like this really wild fan fiction or something,
And I'm like
it's just
giggling the whole time.
yeah. Like, oh, I just read this little old thing. Eyeballs.
Don't worry. It's super fun. Yeah. I like weird things. It's got some good imagery, man. It's a good time.
I like
Yeah.
how, again, this was not intentional, but we have the first two that went were like, maybe not. And then the last two, you were both just like, don't worry, guys, we're going to end on a positive note. One of the positive notes involved eyeballs, but you know, we enjoyed the books. And I find it funny how that happens sometimes, where we didn't necessarily plan it, but it worked out really well.
Michaela probably already knows the title I'm about to say. But The Drowning Girl by Caitlin R. Kiernan is the best spooky book I've ever read in my life. I read it a handful of years ago and I really, really liked it. It is about a girl with schizophrenia who is basically writing a manuscript / diary thing to straighten out the truth versus the facts of her life and her timeline, because she has met a woman for the first time 3 times, and in each of them, like in one she's a mermaid, and in another I think she's a werewolf, and then I think in the third one she's like just like a ghost, but I don't remember entirely. But the gist is that she, like, because she remembers meeting this person for the first time thrice, she is basically just like, I have to figure out what is going on in my life. Like, I have to find the truth. Whether or not that is factual is irrelevant. I have to figure out what is true. And it is a really interesting exploration of both the mental illness and the concept of an unreliable narrator. I think it's actually the best execution of an unreliable narrator that I've ever worked with, because she knows that she is unreliable, because that's the whole point of this, is that like she's trying to nail things down. It is set in Massachusetts, both in Boston and out, and it heavily involves the work of a painter that I think is actually still even hosted at the MFA. So it's very good. My copy is full of underlining.
As someone who borrowed it, yes.
Yeah. The language is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, the prose is really truly phenomenal. So
Well, then that we all have something to look forward to for another spooky book, maybe. I am going to go back to my particular brand of romance. But yeah, there's been some great stuff in here. Well, some stuff you might want to avoid, but also like some stuff you might want to watch on Netflix, whether you're feeling a documentary or the Lockwood series, the Lockwood books, this incredible cosmic horror, or The Drowning Girl. If you have read any of these things and you have opinions on them as well, maybe they're the same or maybe they're different, please do let us know down in the comments. We hope you have enjoyed this spooky, it did end up mostly spooky theme. So this will come out slightly before Halloween, as long as I get it edited in time. But again, we would just like to thank Emily and Meghan for joining us. This is always one of our favorite things to do, is to just hear what other people are reading. And even if it is a rant or we actually enjoyed it, it's always really great to hear. We will, again, right now we don't have one planned for November. We could always change our mind, but we do have a themed episode planned for December, which again, we will have be reading YA, people who were YA authors or are YA authors who are now writing adult books. And we will be reading their adult books and comparing them to their YA work that we have also read. So that is our plan next time. My cat is making a lot of noise. So with that, thanks guys, and have a great night. Bye.